Got my presentation, got my audience, and I'm gonna hand it off to whoever wants it. There you go. Cool. All right, well, thank you all for attending my class here today. This is the first class of Introduction to Communication Studies. I am Professor Wheatmartian, and let's go on ahead and just just start doing everything. So let me just get it pulled up here all the way. Just give it a moment. Okay, so let's go on ahead and start us off here. So again, just to introduce myself a little bit more. So like I said, my name is Jake Wheatmartian. I have been with the university for about 7 years in total now. Sorry, the cat just got to me. 3 years professionally, 4 years as a student. I actually graduated from here back in 2019, and I also am about to graduate with a master's degree in communication and a teaching certificate in the next week or so. So technically I'm not qualified to teach this class yet, but like in a week I will be. So now that you get to know, or now that you guys know me, as you'll see in the syllabus here that I'm about to show you all, we are actually going to have you guys do introduction speeches next week, which I will go over a little bit again once we look into the syllabus. So speaking of the syllabus, let's go on ahead and pull that up here. So as we look through it, let me just make sure it's actually visible. It's my lesson plan if you ever want to look at it. So yeah, so here is all the basic information for the class. We also, or let's see here, so communications, or Intro to Communication Studies, it is the spring 2022 semester. We will be meeting every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, starting at 1 o'clock, going till 1:50. And then also, if you ever need to reach out to me, the best way to reach out to me is via email, or you could also give me a call. My phone number is listed there on the syllabus. I will also have office hours, both Monday and Wednesday, basically directly after class, as they normally start around 2 and go till 3. So if you need extra help, just reach out to me or just stop by my office. If you can't get to my office hours during those or that point in time, just let me know. We can set something up here for you. But a lot of this stuff you can look over on your own time, just like the learning outcomes of the class. So basically, when it comes to learning outcomes, we just want to make sure that your communication skills are good to go for like the rest of the communication program here at NKU. So you can read through all the learning course outcomes on your own time. But let's go on ahead and look at the required textbooks. So we have 2 required textbooks for this class, that being Communication in the Real World, which we'll start to dive into here today, and then also Public Speaking, which we will go into during the second half of the semester. So make sure, I'll upload a lot of this stuff into the Canvas page, but if you want to buy these books, highly recommend it, but I'm also going to be providing a lot of the resources that you should need. When it comes to the due dates, so all the due dates can be found on campus, or excuse me, not campus, but Canvas. If you need extra time, please let me know as soon as you possibly can. But other than that, we are going to go over the different kinds of speeches and other big assignments that we have going on here. So like I said, first we're going to have the introduction speech, which will be next class. We're actually it's basically you guys are going to give like a 1 to 2 minute speech, just like introducing yourself, where you're from, what your major is, and give you a couple fun facts about yourself. After that, we're going to have an informative speech, where it's more 5 to 7 minutes, and it's just about a special topic that you find interesting that you just want to inform the class about. After that, we're going to have a communication and popular media essay. So basically, we're going to do actually a very shortened version of this here towards the end of the class, but this is basically where we go on to, basically what you're going to do is you're going to pick out some form of media, whether it be like a TV show or movie or video game even depends on what you want to do, where it's just basically like two characters talking or more than two characters, and you just gotta kind of identify all the different kinds of like theories and basically all the lessons that we learned from the class and write a 2 to 3, or excuse me, I believe I put 3 pages, a 3-page paper on there. After that, we have an interpersonal assignment, which you will basically have to write a comparative essay on your 2 interpersonal relationships. So basically, it will be somebody who's, or people who are close to you, and then you just got to write an essay about how like they kind of differ. Also, to kind of round it out here, we have our intercultural assignment, where basically you have to interview somebody from a different culture and write about that. That'll be about 2 to 3 pages long as well. We will also have weekly discussion board posts, so just be on the lookout for those. All the information for that will be put on our Canvas page. We will also have a midterm and final exam as well. All the instructions for that can be found on not only the syllabus, but also the Canvas page, and we'll talk about it once those come up later in the year as well. We also have our whole entire schedule listed out here. Just so you guys know, you guys will have a discussion board due for chapter 1, so just be sure to turn that in by Sunday at midnight. But yeah, some other things that we're going to go over to the class here today. So we're going to just basically take a look at some of the different aspects of communication that we're going to be diving into here later in the semester, and kind of, what are you doing? Sorry. We're going to be looking at some of the aspects of communication that we're going to be studying more and kind of studying more deeply into here later in the semester. But if you guys want to look and see what we got going on for the rest of the semester, it's all detailed out there. And then also we have all of our class policies and everything, and also all the university-wide policies as well. So that is basically it for the syllabus. Like I said, if you ever need to refer back to it, it's up on the Canvas page. You guys can look at it on your own time. But let's go on ahead and start looking at our lecture for today. So let's go on ahead and basically start off with chapter 1 of the Human Communication textbook. So basically, what are human, or introduction to human communication, or as it's entitled, communication in the real world, and introduction to communication studies. That is exactly what it is. It's an introduction type of course. So start off with chapter 1. We want to actually first off start with some questions from you all, just to get you all a little bit more participating and kind of get a bunch of different points of view and everything. So that begs the first question: how all would you describe communication?
Getting an idea across.
Okay. Okay.
Sharing information with other people.
Okay. Sorry, Katie. Those are 2 very, very good general ideas that communication is definitely used for. What might be a few examples of how you communicate in your daily life? Like, let's think more than just talking in a normal conversation. How else would you communicate?
Pointing.
Pointing? Okay. Like more nonverbal communication?
Yeah.
Email, text, and
Okay.
such.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, those are all great forms of communication that some of which we're actually going to touch on here a little bit today. So let's go on ahead, if I can find my cursor here. Let's start off with the history of communication. And believe it or not, this is a very, very brief history of communication. So throughout history, humans have not only been able to use sounds to communicate, like verbal communication, but we are also one of the species on Earth that can also use signs, or letters, or just anything written in order to communicate as well. So basically, oral communication, again, it's anything such as talking, anything that makes a sound, anything like that. But written communication, that's where we also have, again, anything written, whether it be writing stuff down on a piece of paper, or typing a blog post, or anything like that. We are really the only species that can do that. You could make the argument that some gorillas or monkeys can use like sign language, but they can't do it like fluently to the extent that humans can. After that, we also have, or it was also believed that the first words that humans have ever spoke were thought to be, and I'm going to try to say this without butchering it, onomatopoetic, which basically means, I know I said I completely butchered that, but basically what that means is it's essentially a word that exactly sounds like what is actually happening. So think of like swoosh or whack or bark from a dog, something like that, where it's a literal interpretation of the sound that they are hearing. That was thought to be like the first words that humans have ever spoke, and over the course of time, this has evolved into more like humans developing different languages and different dialects and other things like that. So where does that leave us with communication today? So there are 5 general topics that we're going to dive into here. The first one being intrapersonal communication, and basically what intrapersonal communication is, it's how you communicate with yourself. It's basically your thought processes and how do you react to different things going around you. If you want the textbook definition, it's communication with oneself with using internal vocalization and reflective thinking. And the main standout of that is internal vocalization helps to achieve or maintain social adjustment. So again, it's like how you react to situations that are happening outside of the real world, and then also say if you're like in a conversation and you don't want to be like weird, then that's how you kind of adjust the things that are happening in that conversation that you're happening or that you're in. It also takes place inside of your own head. As for all the different kinds of communication that we're going to be talking about today, it is more vocal. Everybody else can see it, whereas intrapersonal, it's all basically right up here. And then lastly, it is also something that we do just for fun in order to pass the time. And I'm sure we've all been in instances where we're all just thinking to ourselves, we get into like a little, like, we just basically get in our own heads, or maybe like a joke pops into our head and like we laugh out loud, like because it's so funny. Like that is basically what that means. So next we have interpersonal communication, and that is like your basic everyday having a conversation with just one other person. It's communication between people whose lives mutually influence one another. And again, it usually happens to 2 people. If you get any more than that, then that's when it comes more like group communication, and it also helps in maintain and even ends the relationships that we have. Again, because it's more like a one-on-one, face-to-face kind of communication. Those are the main building blocks of different kinds of relationships that we have in our everyday lives. Then also, it is structured by social expectations. So basically, whenever you have like a normal conversation, it's not like I'm just going to be like, peace out. You're going to be expected to kind of carry on that conversation and help it meet like its like natural ending, rather than just going off on a tangent or anything like that. It's more like psychological rather than like anything like written down. Next, we have group communication, like I just touched on. So it's communication with 3 or more people that are interacting to achieve some sort of like shared goal. So I'm sure we've all had different kinds of group projects through school or work or anything like that, and that is essentially what group communication is. Even though some people may not like it when it comes into school, it is actually something that is very much used in the real world, because you're always going to be interacting with groups of people on either a weekly, or even a daily basis. It is more intentional and formal than interpersonal communication. So it takes more organization, and you're able to come together and again think of that goal and how to achieve it. Interpersonal, like I said, is also more voluntary, whereas people in the group often are assigned a position when it comes to group communication. So there's always going to be probably 1 or 2 people at the head of the group, and then you can also like give out assignments to other people who need to achieve something else. So it's basically you just come together to work kind of more or less as a team. And then when it comes to working as a team, that's where the whole goal-oriented part of it comes into play, which there's also a subject called group-orientated communication, and that is essentially what that is, but it's also very much used in group communication. Next, we have public communication. So this is basically any form of communication where it's just one person or a small group of people talking to a mass audience. But the mass audience has to be right there, right in front of them. We'll talk about mass communication here next, where it's basically like broadcasted over like TV and whatnot. But just to give you again another textbook definition, it is center-focused form of communication in which usually one person is responsible for conveying information to an audience. So this is basically any form of public speaking, or even what I'm doing right now with you guys. That is also another form of public communication. It is also basically the speaker doesn't develop individual relationships with people like what you may do in like interpersonal and group communication, where it's more like conversation based. Whereas this is basically I'm speaking to all of you all. And also the audience is there, but it's still like, even though the audience is there, it's not like you're getting the benefit of like making those relationships and growing them and whatnot. Next, we have mass communication. So this is basically communication that is transmitted to people through either print or electronic means. Again, when it comes to when it comes to public communication, that's when the people are right in front of you. But mass communication is when it's basically, like I said earlier, broadcasted to wider audiences. This is why I put this example up here with President Biden at the State of the Union address. Even though that he's got a bunch of people right in front of him, this is a very nationally televised, or even internationally televised event that anybody can watch. So that is like the main difference, is that it's broadcasted to a larger audience. The only main difference between public and communication and mass communication is the way that it's delivered. And then also there have been it attempts to give the illusion of a personal connection, but the relational aspect is just not like inherently there. So the speaker could say like, hey, we're all in this together, or try to relate to basically everybody that they're broadcasting to, but it doesn't really help if like everybody that they're broadcasting to isn't exactly right there in front of them. And then also, this is arguably the most powerful form of communication, just because you're reaching out to so many more people. All right, so now we are going to break off into our activity time. So basically what the activity is for today, like I said when I was going over the syllabus, is essentially I'm going to ask you guys to look on your phone, go onto YouTube, and find a piece of media, whether it be a scene from a movie or a TV show, and see how that's, or like characters interacting, fit into one of the subjects that we just talked about. Does that kind of make sense to you all?
Yeah.
Nope.
Now I am going to take my camera back and I'm going to have you guys do this activity. We're going to have about 5 minutes or so. And in that time, you all can look up, again, like a piece of media and just think about how it fits into one of those groups. And if y'all have any questions, just let me know. And it doesn't have to be like super long either, just for the sake of time for all of this. You got one?
Yeah.
Okay. Ian, are you still working?
Almost. pulling it up now.
Okay, well, let's go on ahead and look at Nate's. I'm also gonna show it on. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I have this.
I think she looked great. Cheryl Canning. What did I say? You said Cheryl Canning, but it's Carol Channing. It's Cheryl Canning. That's her name. Say it again. Is it not right? What's her character? Cheryl in the Pandora Box. What's the character's name she played? Cheryl Canning. Is that not it? JC! Is it not the name? I want to tell you, but it's so funny to watch. Okay, Carol Channing. Cheryl. Carol. Got it! Like her character, Channing Tatum. Yeah. The way you were dead serious.
All right. So let's get an explanation, Nate. Since you went first, why did you pick the vine that you did?
I feel like it had two of the communications that you mentioned, because the kid was originally talking to a group, and so that was a direct communication between two individuals or a group setting. And then the video, was taken so that that kid also communicated his ideas of having the power of God in anime to the entire world. So I think that, it
Okay.
embodies two of them.
Okay. Those are two very, very valid arguments. I would say, did they ever show the group actually in that video?
They don't.
Okay.
So
I was going to say, because he could be talking to one person, but he could also be talking to a group, but I get what you're trying to say.
all right.
Ian, same question for you.
All right. Well, I first looked up speeches because I figured that would be an easy way to find one. But all the speeches were long, so I went to something I knew was less than a minute, which was an interpersonal communication between Katya and Trixie about, I don't think that was Trixie, I forget what that queen's name was, but about how to pronounce Carol Channing.
All right, awesome. And what groups do you think it fit into?
Interpersonal communication.
Interpersonal? Okay.
Mhm.
See, looking at that, or I completely agree with you, but I would, like Nate said, it was recorded and broadcasted, so I think it also fits under the hat of mass communication, but since it was more of an interview type of thing, then I could also see the interpersonal communication side of it as well. So yeah, those are both great examples. And I'm not gonna lie, Nate, yours kind of caught me off guard. All right, so let's have a little bit more of a discussion about about the activity that we just did. So first question, how do you think the different types of communication work together? This doesn't exactly have to be with the scenes that you just did, but given the fact that, again, both of your guys' were recorded, but it was people interacting with people, how do you think, again, the question states, how do you think the different kinds of communications that we just looked at kind of work together?
There's definitely some overlap in the communication. With mine, I pointed out that, it probably hit at least two categories of communication. And there's just, with everything you do today, it's going to be recorded. So, most likely everything you do will hit two lines of communication, at least.
I think they definitely build on each other. I mean, you never see it at play, but anytime you see someone speaking, it's because their intrapersonal communication is telling them what to say. And then when you have interpersonal communication, that can build up and that can be used in group communication. So it definitely can build on each other. As Nate was saying, eventually everything we're using gets recorded. So it can technically also be qualified as mass communication as well.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So, based on the scene that you picked, what were some of the positives and negatives of the form of communication? And just for the sake of it, let's just completely forget like if it was recorded and uploaded on YouTube. So let's just go with like one form of communication that isn't mass communication. Like, what is the positive and negatives of that?
Obviously, you know, the positive of him being there in the moment, that kid talking to them, you know, to them or to that one person that they were talking to. Like, they really got the vibe that he had the power of God and anime on his side. So, you know, I don't think us as the viewer, you know, gets the same feeling.
Like, do you think what he said would have less power should it not been recorded?
Oh yeah, because I'm funny and I say funny things all the time. So, but I'm not famous. So,
Okay. And Ian, what about you?
Definitely, I think there's positives to interpersonal communication because you saw they were able to share a laugh together.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a personal touch to them learning how to pronounce Carol Chan.
All right, awesome. Or like, I liked like the intro personal of that because you could have seen like the gears turning in their head, like just try to like make sure that they're saying the same thing. So like that's also what I kind of got from it. But yeah, that is basically it for the class today. Does anybody have any questions or anything like that? All right, so basically, just before you guys go, just want to give you a reminder about the discussion board that we have due on Sunday, or Sunday night. Just be sure to get it uploaded on the Canvas page before then. And then also come prepared with a 1 to 2 minute introduction speech that we will hopefully get through for all the class next week. So thank you all for coming and hope to see you all, or actually no, not next week. Because it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, bring your introduction class, or excuse me, bring your introduction speech to Wednesday because it is Monday today. So be ready for that. All right. Well, that should be it. What was the end time?
almost